Okay, welcome back to members of 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas, in our ongoing study in A Philosophy of Religion by Edgar Sheffield Brightman, dated 1940. We are looking at our final lesson in this manuscript. It's been a great journey. We've looked at two books in one, really. His first half of the book was a phenomenology, and the second half of the book is his presentation of the logic of faith. For a final lesson, we're going to take a look at pages 450 to 489, and we're going to look at closing out with the concept of balanced truth. He wants to discuss balanced truth in these final few pages, and it will conclude part 2 of the manuscript on the logic of faith. Let's begin with block 1 and take a look at internal criticism. Remember, in our last lesson, we discovered that experience is always interpretive experience, always interpretive construction for living religion. We constantly are interpreting our environment. We are constantly interpreting our experience. And so we want to understand now, how does criticism work within that interpretation process? We begin with note 1, spiritual growth. There is spiritual growth in praxis. Axiogenetic tendencies are revealed as the goals for human praxis. There's growth in gnosis. The self must grow in forming the eidos ideals that we want to actualize through the logic of faith. There's growth in aletheia truth. We must be open-minded toward aletheia truth within that dialectic of the logic of faith. And he says, just as the Sermon of the Mount was, it reflected that openness toward truth. There's growth in positing. Living religion is immersed in a dialectic of truth claim and counterclaim. We are out to validate and actualize and verify truth claims through experimental positing, outgoing, desire for ideals, and the return moment of interpretive construction, all to validate truth claims. Now, note 2, growth and the imminent self-criticism of living religion. Criticism means critical judgment, says Brightman. Each claim is analyzed, new insights arise, and then we form a synthesis from those aspects of the dialectic of the logic of faith. We do engage in dialogue at Aristotle's De Kunta threshold, a dialogue with others who seek a balanced truth with us. We do have dialogue within the body of Christ, dialogue within the body of living religion in order to work through our logic of faith. It's not done in isolation. And our dialogue is governed by the faith in divine sovereignty and the submission to the divine will. Balanced truth equals faithful living within the tension between gnosis and praxis. We begin with posited gnosis. Then we move through the praxis of outgoing desire of ideal. And then we have the return moment of revision, of interpretive construction. It's always a dialectic of gnosis and practice, what Brightman called experimental positing and interpretive construction. Experimental positing and interpretive construction, that's the way that he worded it. Growth and the revelatory critique of Jesus as Christ. In note 3, in Isaiah, the prophet says that he dreams of a warless world where swords are beaten into plowshares. Jesus makes this prophetic ideal his maxim of conduct. Resist not him that is evil, turn the other cheek, or go forth as sheep in the midst of wolves, wise yet harmless as doves. Living religion is praxis guided by gnosis. It is praxis guided by experimental positing. It is praxis of the desire for ideals guided by the experimental positing of gnosis truth, of eidos ideals. Religion is a developing process of self-criticism. And Brightman says, much like Hegel's dialectical movement. We've already mentioned that before, but Brightman is the American Hegel. He is the Hegel of American philosophy. He is the Aristotle and the Hegel of American philosophy. And in 1930, he said he had already come up with a new appreciation for Hegel. And this is 10 years later, so he has even engaged more with Hegel. He did not simply begin with Hegel. He has grown, he tells us, even in 1930, he said he had grown in appreciation of Hegel. So, most scholars do grow in their convictions, grow in their understanding. Brightman confessed that even in 1930, he was growing in his awareness of the importance of Hegel's system. And this is 10 years after that. So we've got a chance to look at internal criticism. Now we need to look at external criticism and balance truth in Block 2. And the task of external criticism is, first of all, a system must be internally coherent. Then, external criticism takes place. It is to identify areas of experience not included within the investigated system, and it is to posit alternative hypotheses for the explanation of the facts of experience. It will identify and it will alter a positing of alternate hypotheses. But Brightman wants to negate two of these external criticisms right away. He wants to absolutely negate the absurd criticism that religion is an outgrowth of fear, and he wants to also negate immediately the criticism that religion is the rationalization of desire. He has taught already that religion is certainly not that. Living religion, Christianity, is not that way. He wants to make that point clear here and negate these two criticisms. So under note 2, we look at the 5 responses to this accusation of outgrowth of fear. The believer asserts an experience where value signs are present as axiogenetic power. The self cooperates within the movement of these tendencies in order to raise tendency to event of axiosoteric event. Remember, from our previous lessons, we want to raise axiogenetic tendencies to axiosoteric event. Fear alone is not religious. An attitude of fear toward God is an act of ceasing to be religious, says Brightman. God instead is perceived as embodying true value. We don't fear God of true value. Brightman says perfect divine love casts out fear. That's his axiom. Perfect divine love of the realization of true value casts out fear. We participate in that cooperative endeavor with the movement of the divine spirit. Now, negation of calling religion rationalization of desire. There are 4 responses. Fulfillment of value is the essence of religion. Religion is actually the critique of true and the true interpretation of desire as a moment within the logic of faith. So, Christianity critiques desire. It's the outgoing desire for ideals that is motivated by experimental positing of eidos ideals. So we actually critique and create true interpretation of desire. It's a moment in the logic of faith. The posited real is the desire of living religion, which is verified through the test of the logic of faith. Outgoing desire for value is followed by the return moment of interpretive construction, which is systematic and interrelated. So it's not a rationalization, it is very much a tested process. It's not an intellectual rationalization of desire. Desire is critiqued by living religion. It is critiqued by the logic of faith. And we've had so many lessons already now in the second half of the book. We understand the logic of faith, and we know it is a critical dialectical movement. A critical dialectical movement that is always ongoing toward further perfection, further understanding. It is not dogmatic, it is not absolute, it is not a rationalization for certain. Now we move on to block 3. We've looked at internal criticism and balanced truth, external criticism and balanced truth. Now we're going to look at sociological criticism and balanced truth, the social aspect. On block 3, we begin by looking at negating the criticism that religion reinforces the ruling class and pacifies the oppressed. Brightman says the greatest religious leaders have always sided with the oppressed. Hebrew prophecy has always sided with the oppressed. In Luke 4:18, Jesus was anointed to proclaim good tidings to the poor. Christianity teaches social justice. Christ came to preach the gospel to the poor. Remember, when he answered John the Baptist's question, he says, tell him that the poor have the word preached to them. This is why Jesus was anointed in his ministry. It was to proclaim good tidings to the poor. In Luke 4:18, we have that authoritative axiom. Now, number 2, negating the notion that origin determines meaning. No developing process can be understood simply by its earliest stages. No living process, no living religion can be traced to a single, simple origin. Religion is a process of development, engaging the personality of human beings and their social environment. Christianity is dynamic. Christianity is dialectically dynamic. It is not a simplistic single moment origin. It is not that way. So that is to be negated. Origin determining meaning. With any living religion, it cannot be oversimplified to that kind of a statement. And number 3, negating the notion that religion is just imaginative poetry only. Brightman says that view separates the world of experience from the world of value. That's contrary to living religion. It's contrary to Christianity. Religion always possesses significance for the real. It always possesses signs and sign construction models for the real. It always relates value to the real. It is not simply imaginative poetry. It is gnosis, it is praxis, it is outgoing desire for the ideal, it is return interpretive construction. Now, under religion and science, Brightman says the real conflict is between a philosophy that excludes religion and a philosophy that includes religion. And Brightman, of course, is positing the notion that philosophy must include religion. Philosophy must include religion. Philosophy provides the theoretical, religion provides the phronesis practical, and the praxis practical action. Now, under the notion of verification, Brightman says verification consists of a coherent experience situation. Memory, reason, identity, and purpose all play a necessary role in verification, even in the scientific realm. So verification is not simply the arrangement of atoms. It is not simply strict scientific method. It is a process involving consciousness. It involves memory, reason, identity, and purpose. The real question is this: are there signs in humanity for a better reality, for a better notion of the real? Signs like freedom, justice, and intelligence. Brightman is all about the notion of the real. And we know from Hegel that is the realm of positing. And we've discussed this already many times in previous lessons. But he closes out his philosophy of religion by reminding us that philosophy of religion is about signification. It is about sign creation, eidos, sign, ideal creation, and developing that into an interrelated, coherent model, and then positing that coherent model of eidos ideals through practical phronesis particularization and then praxis outgoing desire of action to realize those ideals and then to gather in the return moment, to revise our gnosis through interpretive construction. So he concludes the way that he began part 2, with a articulation of the logic of faith. All 3 moments here are an articulation of the logic of faith. It's all about those 3 moments. It's about experimental positing of our eidos ideal model of kingdom. Then we go out of the self in a outgoing desire for actualizing those ideals. Through the praxis of action and reflection, there's always a return moment out of that surplus of promise that is always returning. There's new insight that returns, new truth that returns, new discovery. We internalize that in an interpretive and constructive way of revising our long-term memory model that we hold. We revise that. That also helps to reinforce our motivational base of conviction. All of this has to work together. This entire project by Brightman has been all about, the first half of the book, the 3-layered phenomenology. And then, after the 3-layered phenomenology, and after that solid base of structure, then the second half of the book has been understanding the logic of faith. So basically, his philosophy of religion has been a phenomenology plus a logic. It's been a phenomenology plus a logic. Those 2 books have been combined into one 500-page volume that is a true scholarly masterpiece. That's why it's been republished. It's been universally recognized as a scholarly masterpiece of Christian philosophical teaching. You could call it theological, but we'll call it philosophical because it's dealing primarily with a theoretical. But we're not stopping with Brightman yet this year. This concludes this study in the philosophy of religion, but we shall discuss the next project shortly in our next meeting, but it will be another Brightman project because we've really been challenged here by a great opening up of Christian phenomenology and Christian logic. That's going to wrap up this final lesson, and we'll pick up next time in our new project.